got it. First of all, you're very laid back. And when you're dealing with technology, I like that kind of attitude, because sometimes technology gets in the way and it ruins your mood and it can ruin your day. But it will not do that for us today. So my name is Sam Mwangi. My name is Sam Mwangi, and I'm hoping to have to make this a conversational presentation. And I'll tell you the way that I'm approaching it. First of all, you and I share a background. I'm an African like you. I was born and raised in Kenya, and lived in Kenya for 30 years, where I worked as a journalist. So I think I understand some of the issues you deal with as media people. And some of my research right now is studying community media in Kenya. I go to Kenya often. I'm about to go there next month. I try and go every year, collect data, interact with people there, do some training workshops. So I was very happy when Bill extended this invitation, because I like to give back and to share what I have learned with people who can use that knowledge. So my talk is divided in the following sections. Number one, I would like to talk a little bit about my African background, and also the community media research that I have done in Kansas over the last 10 years. And instead of listing down every paper that I have written and published, what I have tried to do is to tease out the knowledge that I think you can use in your publishing and media business. My research is in community media. It's in media and democracy. And last year, after 10 years of doing community media research, the director of the Huck Boyd Center stepped down, and I was asked to be the new director. The Huck Boyd Center was set up in 1990. It's a national community media center. Its job is to serve and strengthen the local newspapers, broadcast stations, and other media that play a role in the survival and revitalization of America's small towns. Kansas is pretty rural. And some of the towns that we research, some of the media organizations we research, they serve very small towns. For example, I just came back from Almina. Almina has about 1,500 people. And they have a media organization there that is run by women volunteers. 12 women who have volunteered for 21 years. They don't make any money. They don't pay themselves a salary, but they see themselves as the nerve center of their community. So the Huck Boyd Center is set up to maintain and service these nerve centers that are community media organizations, and which are so vital to the lives of the communities they serve. Bill, if you don't mind, get the next slide. How do we do that? As a center, we service community media through research, and I'll talk about that research in a minute, through training workshops. Last year, I brought a couple of editors here to a meeting. And what I wanted to find out is how the center can meet their needs. What are their urgent needs? Guess what their number one need was? They wanted to find out how they can use social media for marketing purposes. Because they were arguing, there's no point in working so hard to do a story, publish it, and nobody finds it. So how can we marry social media to publishing to serve its marketing interests? We have 3 professors here who are really good at social media. They teach social media classes. So I had them organize workshops. We brought in those editors. We charged them nothing. And for 3 days, they went through a boot camp. So that's a training workshop that the Huck Boyd organizes. We also organize an annual lecture. We bring in a community media person. Over the last 2 years, America has gone through some kind of challenges based on race issues. So we've had social movements. You know about the guy who was killed in Minnesota by a cop, and that ignited a storm of protests. So I think it's a good idea to bring in somebody who deals with race relations. So I found a lady in Wichita who publishes a newspaper for African Americans. And she came in and gave us a talk. It was one of the best community media lectures that we've organized. It was well attended, and she answered a lot of questions. And she talked about some very sensitive things that she faces in her publishing business. We also partner with organizations like the Kansas Broadcasting Association. We partner with them and we organize training workshops. Now, Bill, get the next slide so I can share some research that we have uncovered, research that maybe can resonate with those who are listening to me this morning. America, especially rural America, is going through something that is interesting. Over the last 10 years, 2,000 community newspapers have closed down in America. And that has given rise to something that is called the news deserts. So I am in Manhattan, Kansas. About 1 hour from me is a town called Baldwin City. Baldwin City lost its newspaper 2 years ago. And I thought, this is a fantastic research opportunity. What happens to a community when it loses its newspaper? What happens to a community when news desert comes knocking? So I got in a car with 2 professors and we went there and camped there for a week. We wanted to find out what happens when a town loses its newspaper. We talked to the school district. We talked to the business people. We talked to banks. We talked to ordinary people. And this is what we found. When a community loses its newspaper, the business people have no way of letting people know that they are hiring. The business people have no way of letting people know that they have discounts this weekend. The school district has a hard time communicating to parents about events that are coming up in the school. High school students who are looking for jobs in the summer have no way of finding out who is hiring. And we uncovered a place that had lost its central form of communication. In other words, when a news desert comes to a town, when a town experiences a news desert, there's lack of awareness about community events. People also see the loss of a newspaper as a sign that their community is dying. And for those who love and participate in the democracy, they see when a newspaper closes down, they see a lack of transparency at the local level of politics because there's no one to hold elected officials accountable. And so things like corruption start creeping in because there's no watchdog. So the newspaper or the media organization, community media are central to the identity and functioning of the communities they serve. Just the other day, I got a phone call that Baldwin City now has a functioning newspaper. So I thought, let me go down there and see what's happening. And here is a lesson for those of you who are listening. Some of you, I know that most community media organizations in Africa, one of the challenges is finances. We do this because we love journalism. We do this because we believe we are playing an important role in our community, but sometimes lack of resources can get in the way. So the guy who is starting a newspaper in Baldwin City has an important lesson for us. He doesn't have a lot of money, but he's very innovative. So what he has done is to partner with the high school. Partner with the high school. I've been researching community newspapers in Kenya. I have never seen a paper there that is partnering with high schools to get around the challenge of resources, lack of resources. And this is the second time in my time in Kansas that I'm seeing a community media partner with high schools to get content without paying so much money for it. Because for the high school students, it's a way for them to build their portfolio. And so they're not doing it for the money. They are doing it for it's a learning process for them. So if you learn nothing else this morning, it's perhaps you can go home and explore opportunities with high school students, opportunities with university students. I also learned this lesson from another community. It's called Ginsburg, Kansas. They had a tornado, a level 5 tornado that leveled the town, destroyed it completely. The federal government came in and they gave them $5 million to set up a community media organization. It's perhaps the most modern media organization I've ever seen in such a remote place. And it was built as a citizen journalism project. They were hoping that the community would take ownership and maybe contribute stories. So I spent a lot of time in Ginsburg, Kansas, and I uncovered something really interesting. They had a lot of money. They had the best equipment, but they had no content. And I'm like, what's going on here? What's wrong here? You have everything. What happened to your journalism, citizen journalism mission? So I spent a few days there and I realized something. Greensburg is a retirement community. Most people who are there, I may be the youngest person there. Most people are in their 70s, 80s. And you come in with your modern equipment and you expect them to contribute stories. They showed me the equipment. And they said, one of the problems is the people who live here, they cannot operate this equipment. It's too sophisticated for them. That's why they are not contributing content. So we sent a few students there to do some work for them, do some training, and maybe contribute content, but that was not a long-term solution. So the lady at the high school decided to set up a journalism club. And the journalism club is now the one that contributes content for the Greensburg Community Media Organization. So this is the second time that I'm seeing a high school community media partnership that is successful. And so if you're listening to me this morning, maybe that's a model you can try. I'm also going to share something else from my research that perhaps you can take home with you. And bear with me because this is not about journalism, but it's an important lesson. The Greensburg media wanted to make some money for sustainability long term. And something interesting happened. They hired someone who was looking after all their equipment, and this guy could fix cell phones. Greensburg is remote. So he started fixing people's cell phones. He could also do wedding videos. That has nothing to do with journalism, but it's a way of making money. And to me, that was a lesson for community media elsewhere, because most community media that I've researched are struggling financially. And the main complaint is that Facebook and Google are eating our lunch, because advertising is our main model of business. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. How about providing non-journalism services? Africa is perhaps the fastest growing market for cell phones, which is an opportunity for community media in terms of news production and distribution. But I think it's also an opportunity for some extra revenue, getting some extra revenue. What is wrong with having a service desk in a newsroom where people can bring their cell phones for servicing? What's wrong with that? And you charge them a fee. People in Greensburg, when they have a wedding, they go to the community media, and the guy who is the technician will do a wedding video for them and charge a fee. I've also seen commercials for businesses done by the community media organization, and they are broadcasting around the town, and he charges for that. And to me, the lesson there is that perhaps instead of complaining that advertising is no longer a reliable way of funding our business, perhaps we can look for non-journalism revenue streams that we can generate with what we've got. The other thing that we do is, as a center, is we host we partner with the International Society of Weekly Newspapers, and we host a conference. In fact, we have the conference is happening next month, so I'll be in Nevada. And my job is to send out calls for papers, assign those papers to reviewers. Bill is one of our reviewers. Thank you, Bill. And then have those papers presented at the conference. It's a very intensive process, but it places the Huck Boyd Center at the heart of the conversation that is happening in community media world. Next slide. We just did a paper identifying different revenue streams that community media can tap into to be sustainable. And I have mentioned offering non-journalism services. There are other streams that we identified. People are experimenting with different ways of doing things. One organization is asking for donations. If you think what we do is so vital to this community, consider donating to support our services. And they have suggested donations. $25, $50, $100. Other community media organizations have reconfigured their registration, and they are no longer for-profit organizations. They are now non-profit organizations. And what that does is it allows them to apply for grants from different organizations to be sustainable. In Kansas, we have a new organization, is a new news organization. It's being funded by one of the billionaires here. 3 journalists pitched the idea to him that this is good for our community. So I don't know if you have a rich person in your community, but this is someone who is trying to build their legacy. They have spent their lives building businesses. They are old. And maybe one way of securing their legacy is to leave behind a news organization for their community. So he has just funded 3 journalists who are doing a good job of covering the entire state of Kansas. And they are partnering with different universities. I have just sent 3 journalists to them, 3 students to them. So there are different ways, different models that people are trying. Now, you can see why they are experimenting. All these 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different ways of doing something. It tells me there's no sure way of funding community journalism. The only sure way that has worked for more than 100 years was the advertising model that has been disrupted. So we are in the business of discovering the next sustainable model. And you are free to experiment. If anything I said feels like a good way to try things, go ahead and do it. Go ahead and do it. I think the Almina example is very unique. Women who have for 21 years volunteered to put out a newspaper. Now, I'm from Africa, you are from Africa. There's something unique about our culture. We are a community-based, in our culture, we join hands, we have women groups. And once they identify a mission, there's nothing that can stop them. Is there a way that you can tap into that cultural orientation and get volunteers who see what you do as something so vital to their community and their culture that they are willing to donate their time and resources to come to the newsroom and help you even without getting paid? Think of all the things we do as a community back home without getting paid. We join hands and we help each other. Why can't we add a community newsroom to that a group of organizations that can tap into that cultural orientation of working together to solve problems without getting paid? We do it all the time. The other things that we've done, we've helped newspapers, community newspapers, transition to online publications. When I say that, people look at me twice, like, what's wrong with you? I thought we transitioned long ago to online publications. Well, welcome to rural America. Welcome to rural America. I'm always surprised when I travel to rural places and I find that the Lowcost newspaper is a PDF that comes out on Fridays. And when I teach convergence journalism, I talk about all these bells and whistles that you can use to add value to your storytelling. And the first question I've always asked is, why are you still doing PDFs in the year 2023? And they tell me rural Kansas is an access problem, the internet access. Kansas ranks the lowest in terms of speed. In America, we are the lowest in terms of speed. Here at the university, the speed is unbelievable. It's blazing, But the further you go, you realize that there are still people who have to sit there and wait for something to download for a long time. And if you are running a community newspaper in rural America, you cannot afford to do videos and stuff like that. You do a PDF on a Friday, and people wait for it. People wait for it. So for organizations like those, when it's time for them to transition to online publications, sometimes we will go and send students to help them. We also organize training seminars for new and experienced journalists. This year, we've talked a lot about diversity because of what has been going on in America. Diversity, broadly speaking, not just diversity in terms of color, but we also diversity in terms of thought. When Donald Trump was elected president, American journalists were shocked because we all think the same way, and we are poorly prepared to cover rural counties. Rural America is very different, and we don't get people in rural communities. We are poorly prepared to serve and write stories that reflect the true feelings of people in rural neighborhood, in rural counties. So we've done some training to try and talk about diversity, broadly speaking. Yeah, diversity in terms of thought, diversity in terms of age. Kansas is an aging state. Yeah, people graduate and they leave Kansas, and the folks who remain behind are farmers. Most of them are old people, but they don't see themselves in the stories we do. So we've tried to promote that kind of diversity in story narratives. Bill, if you don't mind. No. Talk about internships that we offer. And maybe this is an idea that perhaps you can take home. It's an idea that you can take home. Who needs internships in your community? Not just high school folks. How about those college students who are on vacation? Can they earn some internship hours? There's something I've always thought was interesting. When I came to America many years ago, I was surprised by the idea about volunteering. We don't have that a lot back home. If you volunteer at an organization, you hope that it's going to turn into a job. And so the culture of volunteering is not well ingrained in our societies. Perhaps you, as a media organization, can be that agent of change that picks up the concept of volunteering and introduces it to your media organization or to your community as a way of plugging in the resource gap, as a way of helping you address the needs that you face. Yeah. We've also done studies on how some media organizations have found relevance in their communities. We've also introduced some media literacy program because of the way we found that people tend to believe the stuff they see on social media, and they have a hard time distinguishing misinformation and correct information. And finally, and this is my takeaway from the research you've done, and you can take this and run with it. We went to a community that had lost a newspaper, and we found something very interesting. Someone told us when we went there, he is not going to start another newspaper. He said the following: maybe newspapers are disappearing as a platform, but news will always be relevant. The platform that I use to serve that content doesn't matter. The platform will change, but the business will remain, of journalism will remain. So what he was doing, he was, instead of starting a newspaper, he decided to do a streaming service. And he had a unique problem. He had wonderful content, but People were not going to his site, and he wanted us to research what the problem was. And I think we found out what the problem was. There was a learning curve that he had not considered. When you go from a newspaper that you hold in your hands, and now you are asking people to go online, and stream content, there's a learning curve involved. And some of those people were not digital natives. There are people who, they were my age, the internet is not their thing, and it was taking them time to get used to this new way of accessing content. I think there's an opportunity in Africa. There's an opportunity in Africa. We have new technology coming in all the time through cell phones and all that. Why do you have to keep putting out a newspaper? If you're doing a radio station, is there a way of cutting down the cost by taking advantage of the cell phones that now exist? And just streaming straight from your basement. Streaming straight from your basement. In other words, maybe the idea that we are losing newspapers, it may be an opportunity for us to rethink what journalism looks like. Why do we have to have a newspaper? What is more important? Is it the content or the platform? I think if you're serving people relevant content, don't mind the platform that you use to serve that. So, Bill, I wanted to share that research, maybe that they can take. But what you had asked me to do is to talk about low-cost tools. And what I have done for this group is to come up with about 16 tools. I have put down the websites on this PowerPoint. So if you send them the PowerPoint, they can actually test it out. If you don't mind, if you can go to the next slide, I'll tell them what I mean. No, the next one, where we talk about, yeah, I talked about all these. Yeah, keep going. There. So this is what I was actually supposed to do. So what I have done is identify some tools. Now, here is what you need to know. All these tools, they come with a demo. If you go to the website, there's a demo you can play that shows you what you can do with it. I suspect some of you are already using some of the stuff I've put here. But what Bill asked me to do is to consider that you may not have a lot of resources to buy expensive platforms and software. So I have stayed away from some really good tools that are very expensive. I stayed away from that. I looked for, and I asked my GTE, help me find low-cost tools that somebody in the village who wants to publish can have access to without having to pay a lot of money for. Most of these are free. And as somebody who studies technology, I have an attitude. I'm never intimidated by technology because I have learned that you learn how to use it by using it frequently. You learn how to navigate a tool by actually getting down and opening it and figuring it out slowly. And YouTube is my best friend in terms of learning how to navigate tools. There's also something else called Lynda, which was acquired by LinkedIn. And Lynda, L-Y-N-D-A, has a lot of lessons, video lessons on any tool you can think of. But go to any of the websites I've given you, you will play a demo and you can start testing it out. Or you can just keep the PowerPoint with you, take it home, and when you get to the village, you can test it out there. But you have the tools with you. I have done the work. We'll just forward the PowerPoint to this team and let them test out. And also feel free to give them my email address so that our contact does not end this morning. I'm an African just like you. There's no reason why we can't keep talking, even when Bill is not there. It is 8:51. I'm conscious of time. I was told to talk for an hour and then take a break and come back and take questions. I will just do whatever you want me to do, Bill.
All right, Sam. Well, thank you for giving me that authority over your time. Tell you what, why don't we take the break now, and then when we come back, we'll go through the list of tools that you've created, and then we'll stop after each one to get questions on each one.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yes, and we can also talk about the business of community media back home. I mean, in a way that resonates with them, because I don't know what their challenges are. And I was hoping that we can talk about anything that they want to ask me regarding community media, how it compares to America, when I compare community media in America to that in Africa. So we can have a wide range of discussion.
So that's a good idea. So how about we'll take our 10-minute break, and again, try to keep the 10-minute break to 15 minutes, everybody. And then we'll come back, and then we'll go through Sam's list of low-cost tools and ask questions on the fly of that. And then if we have any time left at the end, we'll just open it up. Any question you want to ask him anything. Okay. All right, Sam, we'll see you in about 10, 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. A service that you discussed. And then Asmat will come to you to ask the question. All righty. We're all set. We're all set. Okay, go ahead, Sam.
Yes. If I had to do this again, Bill, next year in the years to come, this is what I would do. I would start by asking the participants what tools they would like to learn about, because they all have different needs. So I don't do accounting. Yeah, but I am assuming somebody somewhere needs to do accounting and payroll. So I threw in some things there, but they were all based on guesswork. Yeah. And that's why I'm saying, even though I have these 16 tools, if you have other needs after this conference, feel free to email me if I can be of help to you. Otherwise, these are general ones that I asked community media people what they love and what they use. Superdesk was among the very top ones. It's a CMS, it's a content management system. It's powerful. It has all the features that you would need, whether you're running a solo operation or a full-fledged newsroom. And they have a nice demo. You have a nice demo. So in terms of learning curve, it's not a very steep one, depending on how sophisticated your operation is. I'm assuming most of you want basic stuff, you know, in terms of assigning stories, in terms of monitoring the stories, you know, and finally in distributing, in publishing and distributing what you have. So Superdesk has it all.
Okay, any questions about Superdesk, or is anybody here using Superdesk?
That's what I would like to know. Is somebody using Superdesk?
No, nobody's using it, but Slindili has a question.
Oh, hold on. There's an echo.
Thank you, Professor. I just would like to ask is it completely free? Or is it one of those, like, you know, with Adobe, for example, you get a free
Well,
version, but the more things you want to do, then you have to start paying for a subscription?
most of it is free. The premium part you will never need. The premium part is for a very large organization, like a news agency. You will never need that. So yes, go ahead and use it. Go ahead and use it. Personally, I have a favorite
So,
which I'm going to show you about in a
Prof,
minute.
I think the most refreshing thing I heard you say is that maybe what we need is a needs assessment of what tools we actually use.
Yes,
And
that's
maybe
what
the
I
question
would
I
do.
have is, I'm not sure if you're still going to cover it, but the newsletters. For those of us who are using newsletters or want to launch newsletters, what are the options for nonprofits? Number one. And number two, for those of us who are already using newsletters, what kind of support, both technical from the production side and from the business side, is available in order to ensure that there is a smooth transition from a print first operation that is transitioning to a hybrid of print and digital, and using the newsletter as a new revenue source. So that's kind of the media environment in which I am working. And the kind of support I'm looking for is for expertise in newsletter management for purposes of driving revenue.
Now, that is a whole different presentation, and it's not covered here. But I have good news for you. I have resources for newsletters that I can share with you. What are you using right now?
We are using MailChimp.
Okay. MailChimp is perhaps one of the most popular, but I have seen new technologies that allow for integration. There's more integration where you can integrate with social media, where you can integrate with advertising platforms, where you can actually earn revenue by integrating with other platforms like YouTube, where the people who are on your list, if they view YouTube, it gets you some revenue as well. So there are new technologies that are integrating different platforms. So you're not just sending out a newsletter, but in the course of sending out newsletter, there is other data that you can collect and be able to target people. So there are more advanced ones. Some of them are free. Others force you to split revenue with them instead of paying for the platform. So, but this particular talk is not about newsletter. I can do that separately with you. Yes, I can do that separately. And that's why my point about maybe doing a needs assessment early on would be good. And we can do that in future. Because I could have integrated that with this presentation.
We actually did ask for some ideas. So
I see.
the ideas were all for low cost, just general low cost solutions.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
you're fine, Sam. And as long as you can share some information about the newsletter technology later, I think we'll be covered. Okay, next slide. All right, buffer.
I think you waste a lot of time. We have all these social media platforms, and my son is doing marketing for an organization in DC. And he used to spend a lot of time. You post on this particular platform, you log out, you go to the next one, and you spend a lot of time. Someone figured out a way of killing so many birds with one stone. So Buffer is a social media tool that allows you to schedule, to create, schedule, and post across different media platforms. It saves you time. It gets you to more people quickly. And in one of the training sessions that we had here the other day, where most community media organizations, they wanted to learn how to use social media for marketing. I think Buffer lets you do that, depending on what it is that you're trying to market. But it's an efficient way of hitting so many targets efficiently and quickly. I don't know how many people you're managing, but Trello is a good project management tool that can help you track tasks, and you see who is doing what and who is making progress. It's an efficient way of managing assignments and managing people. If you are the only person in the newsroom, you may never need Trello, you know? Yes, it all depends. Yeah. Next one.
Thank you. I just would like your opinion on, so do you still recommend social media a lot to try and grow audiences? Because the experience that some of us have been having, including the folks that I was with at Columbus Underground last week, they're saying that, for example, when it comes to Facebook, with the change in algorithms, it's actually not even worth it spending a lot of time trying to use Facebook to grow audiences. Of course, they have a different experience when it comes to Instagram, which is working well for them. But
Well,
yeah, just on the whole, is it still something that we should really focus too much on in light of everything that their approach when it comes to news, whether it's Facebook or Google? Yeah.
yes,
Thank you.
We have a class here. It's called the Journalism Capstone class. It's the class they take before they graduate, and I teach that class. And I have just penalized a group for not using Facebook. They were doing a story about a Catholic church. It's a very old church, but it has just been remodeled. And they were fundraising in the community. And the people who contributed most money were people in my age group. People in my age group use Facebook. They don't use some of these fancy new platforms. So as part of the project, they had included social media, you know, as part of promoting the project and getting it in front of the people who needed to see it. And they left Facebook because they don't use Facebook. These are people in their 20s. And I had to penalize them. I asked them to go and talk to the people they had interviewed, my age mates, and asked them what social media they use. Most of them use Facebook. I know Facebook, I don't like it, but I'm on it. It has problems, it has credibility problems. The algorithm is messed up. It just pushes the things that you keep looking at. But there are benefits to Facebook. People are loyal. It's addictive. And whether that is a positive thing or a negative thing, it's addictive. And if you're trying to grow an audience, depending on the target audience, I think your choice of media is driven by the people you're trying to reach. People in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, grandma, grandpa, they still use Facebook. Yes. So I don't know if you saw, we have a program here. It's called 60 Minutes. Last night they had a story on people who are suing social media because in one case it led to a teenager committing suicide. In another case, it led us to depression. So all the damage that social media has done to different families, that was the focus of the story last night. And you realize the power it has in terms of its addictiveness, in terms of what the algorithm can do in leading you down a rabbit hole that you did not need to go, you know? So there are damages, but there are also positive ways you can use social media. I think it is still the fastest way to market your product because you get so many people so quickly. I love it.
All right, Sam, I'm going to move on to the next slide. Is that okay?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
All right, content stack.
Yes. So another content management system designed to help you personalize content. This one collects data. I don't know how you feel about giving up some of your data. We do that all the time when we get online. But depending on the data that you're leaving behind, it's able to customize content that it serves you. So if you're doing a story for the business community, and maybe people who are in a certain type of business, this one can help you personalize content. So it's good with targeting. It's a content management system, but built into it is a personalization mechanism that depends on data. I'm not supposed to talk about ethics here. Some people may not be happy with what I've just said about collecting data. I am aware of that. I don't want to get into a discussion about how much data we should give and whether it's even ethical for you to be serving people content based on things you've collected about them. All I'm saying is there's a platform there. It's a content management system that allows you to personalize the content you serve. That's all I'm saying. Whether you like that or not, that's not the debate. It exists.
You got much laughter for that one.
Well,
Okay, next tool is PictoChart and of course WordPress.
There are many ways of delivering information. Sometimes we need to do graphics, and PictoChart becomes in handy if you're trying to pass information, and the best way to do it is to visualize it. Then PictoChart is your friend. Now, I love WordPress. A few years ago, I published a book. It's a book about African wisdom. And as part of the contract, they asked me to start a website and start promoting it. One afternoon, I sat in my house and logged onto WordPress. I did not watch any videos, but between 2 and 5, I sat there teaching myself how to do WordPress. By 5 p.m., I had a website, and it's robust, and I did not look at any resources. I just kept doing it. I love the dashboard. Yeah, it's very robust. It's very vibrant. So I can recommend WordPress, and there are some sections of WordPress that are premium. You pay. My students use WordPress for their capstone. I have never paid a penny for WordPress, and my website looks good. So I would recommend it because I use it, and I use the free section of WordPress. If you're doing a newspaper, I think this is the place to go because they have themes, they have newspaper themes, they have newsletter themes, depending on what you're doing. WordPress has you covered. They also have plugins. They work with developers. For example, if you're trying to accept credit cards on WordPress, there are plugins that you can customize. and you would be able to sell whatever it is that you're selling on your site. Now that I just mentioned money, it reminds me that I forgot to mention something about revenues. I don't know if this is the right time to throw in that, but the local community, the local newspaper here has just come up with a new way of earning some money. They are sponsoring events. 2 weeks ago, they had an event where they invited 5 successful businessmen and women to an event as part of a panel. And then they sold tickets to the community. I think it was $20, where you have some kind of dinner and you listen to this panel. And each panel member was supposed to talk about 3 business lessons that they can share with people who want to, prospective business owners. What are the 3? What made you so successful? What are the 3 lessons? The newspaper sponsored that event. They took some of the money. I have not asked them how much they made, but they are also thinking of another event that they can sponsor around healthcare. You, when you go back home, you have a lot of information because you're in the business of collecting information and sharing it. What is it? Is there a particular event that you can organize in your community and maybe charge people for that? That's another way of revenue. And you're still in the business of information, but you're selling information in a different format. I forgot to mention that. In a way, WordPress would allow you to do stuff like that and collecting money. Wix. Wix is, I think you have used this. Most of my students love to use Wix because when they are doing the capstone, I ask them to set up a website, a free website. Most of them will go for Wix because it's easy to use. It's easy to customize. Yeah, you just drag and drop and you run with it. I have used Medium. You can be anonymous on Medium. If you love blogging, that's a platform that you can use. Some of the thing I need to say about Medium is I think it is one of the platforms that has the largest audience I know. They do a really good job of promoting content. You publish something, say you are dealing with some kind of a challenge, mental health challenge, for example. They will take that and they will curate it along other related topics and find an audience for you. Medium is one of those platforms that has the largest audience around the world. I don't know how far you want your content to go, but if you're trying to reach people beyond your community, consider Medium. They do a really good job of helping put your content all over the place. Yes. I like this. This may be my favorite. And I'll tell you why. If you try to get content from news agencies, it can be very expensive. Associated Press, Reuters, and all that. What EasyInsights is doing is it enables you to have a news agency on your phone without having the resources. If you want to know what's going on around the world, the news that is happening around the world, this does it for you. It goes and collects all the information depending on how you've customized it. And then you do the following. Instead of publishing that content, you customize it. You customize it. You don't have to pay. So you know what's happening around the world. How does that relate to the community, the village I serve? So EasyInsights is the news agency for you that keeps you in the know. But you don't want to publish stuff that's happening elsewhere. You want to customize it and make it relevant to your audience. To me, this is how you get around lack of resources. Just by downloading this and customizing it, you tell it what you want to know. And every hour, it updates. And then you can take that and customize it. To me, this is my favorite. Because it makes you look like a big organization. Sorry.
That's okay. Real quick, can you set it up so that it only screens sites that are open publish? Like, for example, Daily Yonder, States Newsroom, stuff that you are absolutely allowed to republish?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you customize it to meet your needs. What do you want to know? Yeah.
Okay, we have a question from the field, from Kate Skinner.
Yeah, hi. I'm just wondering, just because I mean, obviously our publications are, focused on local, and that's the whole purpose of it is to make sure that the news that you're putting out is actually relevant for those particular communities. How does EasyInsights actually then assist, particularly if you're looking at South Africa, and South African content? I mean, this is the thing, because obviously you're saying we could adapt things, but I'm just kind of wondering how relevant it would be to a kind of South African rural, South African small town context. Thanks.
Yes, I think that the key word is customizing. The key word is customizing. When it comes to okay. Let us, for example, I'm sitting at home and EasyInsights shows me a story about the damage that social media is doing to teenagers. In some cases, it's leading to eating disorder. In other cases, it's leading to depression. And in worst cases, it's leading to suicide. Okay, that is happening in America. What does that have to do with me in Johannesburg? A lot. Can I customize that story? Yes. I'm going to the local high school and talking to teenagers who are using social media. And I have no idea what I'm going to find out, but I got the idea from EasyInsights. All I did was customize it to serve my local population. So does that answer your question?
And I would add, normally the localization process is very common here. So if you get an Associated Press story about a national issue, it provides you with national level data that you then build a local story upon. So that's why, if you can find publishers who provide free content that you're free to repurpose, you can use that as kind of the starting base, and then go ask your local people for their insights on how this is affecting locally. And it's a very quick way to generate really interesting content that provides both local context and then national or global context. Follow-up question.
So actually, just a question to all our publishers here. I mean, do you think that this? I mean, is this something that you do actually quite regularly, like take international stories and then repurpose it for the particular town, particular area? Because I just think it's an interesting thought in terms of new kind of areas of content that we can kind of get into. But just a quick kind of question for the room, is this something that would be useful?
We do for our business publication, because I mean, if China is expecting low economic growth, and that will lead to fuel prices dropping in South Africa, that kind of stuff. Yeah. So yeah.
say that there are times when we do tap into the national or international news. However, oftentimes we have far too much content locally to even do this, but then we can use the tool to gather local information. From what I get, from what I'm understanding.
Sorry, Dooney.
No, thanks very much. I mean, Prof, for the presentation. No, I just wanted to echo what my colleague have said. Yes, we do. Recently, or sometimes 2 months back, United Nations, they've released, I mean, the statistics of women who are passing away just after they've given birth or just before, I mean, they give birth. So we took that statistics, and then we take the South African statistics, and then we combine them and we do the story. Yeah, so something that, I mean, we're doing in the local level. Thank you.
I wanna throw a challenge here. It may be beyond the presentation, but I wanted to throw a challenge. We're talking about local journalism, hyper-local journalism, but in most cases, the local stories we do have a much larger connection. They have a connection to the national. They have a connection to the international. So my challenge to you is be local, but also be global. Because sometimes the solution to the problems we are covering have already been found elsewhere. And by connecting what we do to the global, I think we help our audience develop a bigger view of the challenges they are facing. And also we give them more choices in terms of people in this country, they did this to solve this. People in this country, they have solved this way. So I think my challenge is don't do local in isolation. The problems I see in my village in Kenya, I see them in Uganda too. I see them in Kansas too. For example, climate change. For example, the condition of women and how we treat women. The local is connected to the global as well. So I don't know, that's beyond our conversation this morning. It's just a way of rethinking the way we do things. Yeah, the local is personal. Yeah, we own the local. That's where we live. But the local found us because it came from China. COVID found my uncle. He's never been to China, and now he's dead. Yeah. So the local and the global sometimes are connected. Just a different way of thinking about journalism. That's beyond the point this morning.
No, that's good. That's good, Sam. I just wanted to mention, we had Tim Marima from Daily Yonder present the week before last, and they're trying a new experiment. They hired a reporter to cover a news desert in the Four Corners area, where Utah and Colorado and New Mexico are joined. And that reporter has two missions. One, to provide local content with national perspective to the people who live there, and then to provide national content that's based on the experiences of the people who live in that area, because they're dealing with a lot of issues in terms of water conservation, climate change is affecting them, rural broadband and things like that. And so the reporter is going to be doing the same reporting and just packaging each story for two different audiences, one for the local, one for the national. If it works, it's going to be a great model to make the local content of national interest and also to make national stories of local interest. All right. Can you talk a little bit about Dale Pyramid, please?
I work with young people and they get bored easily. They like fancy stuff. So while I may be using WordPress, they may find it boring. and they want something fancy. So Dalet lets you imagine storytelling, and they give you more fancier tools. I don't know the audience that you are dealing with, but if they are young people who get bored easily, I have given you two platforms here, Dalet and Workflow, that allow you to play, plug and play in a more imaginative way, so that you are not publishing plain stuff. Yeah. We started with a more robust the newsroom, the state newsroom. QueenType is a more robust platform. I think they should be charging for it. It may be a matter of time before they introduce a premium section. It's algorithm heavy. I suspect it was done by somebody who used to work for Google. Yeah, but if you're a bigger newsroom and with a more reporters, and you need to produce more robust content, QueenType is for you. Yeah. Okay. Now, I don't feel comfortable talking about these tools because I don't do accounting. I don't do accounting. I hate math. Yeah, the one that I use most here is Wave. When I send money home, I use Wave, but they do more than send money. I suspect most of you have used this because you're dealing with human resource, you are paying bills. So what I have done is provide you with some of the most popular free accounting tools, human resource management tools, payroll tools that you can use. Yeah, it's not it's not an exhaustive list, but it's something you can download and run with it for your numbers. Because although I'm passionate about journalism, I realize I cannot do journalism without money. So the tools that we are looking at here are really, really, really important. It's just that people like us are not numbers guys. We don't deal with resources. So I would rather talk about journalism the whole day than about money. But without the money, there's no journalism. So I realize that these two are very important tools to keep us in business. Yeah. Okay. So I think with that, I can open it up to discuss about either the technology or the business, or I don't know what questions you have based on your own experiences, based on the organization you're working for, based on the challenges and opportunities you have back home. But we can have a conversation. And it's not a training program. It's an African talking to another.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much. This presentation has been amazing. And the tools that you've shared with us as well are really, really going to help us going forward. I would like to just perhaps start a conversation around something that's outside of just the tools themselves. So I see a lot of American tools, and I see a lot of kind of really big mainstream type of enterprise tools that are developed in America. Just as a matter of curiosity, what's your outlook of things that are developed perhaps in Africa and India? Have you stumbled upon any of those? And why would you think that so many of these tools only exist, not really exist, but are developed in like first world countries? Just as a conversation, to start just a different perspective, because I would like to believe that, yes, we live in a global world when it comes to Africa. We're not in isolation, but I see that there's not much of tools that are developed that are going to fix some African problems too. From that perspective, African problems also need African solutions as well. Just an outlook. Yep.
Well, can somebody help me now? I think there's a class I teach. It's called International Communication. We look at the global flows of information, and I start by listing down the 8 biggest communication companies and where they are based. Who controls sports? ESPN, where are they based? America. How about news? CNN, where are they based? America. Google, where are they based? When you try to register a website, yes, you have to come up with a name, right? Who does the internet assignment of names and numbers? Some guy in California. He is the one who decides that any website that is based in Kenya, it has to add with KE. In South Africa, I think it's ZA, right? So we list 8 big companies, and it's a very sad day when I do that, because we realize 95% of global information technology, the companies that control that, are based in America. They're Western companies. And we talk about what does that mean in terms of values, the values that inform journalism narratives, the values that inform the stories we decide to publish. And there are reasons for that. They tend to have a lot of money for budget. They're very good in terms of how they market their products. India produces more movies than Hollywood. When was the last time I saw an Indian movie? Even if I wanted to, I would have a hard time accessing it. So I agree, African solutions, African problems should have African solutions. And there are some websites that try to inspire such solutions. But I have seen some of them. I attended a conference one time, it was in California. And most of the people who are trying to come up with African solutions tend to be Western as well. I know there are some efforts being made in South Africa and in Kenya. I am all for developing African solutions. But when you do develop that solution, you have to be able to deal with the challenge of making it accessible. We have some of the best engineers, but they may not have the money to market their innovations. So their innovations are only known to a small group of people. They may not be in a position to compete with global giants. I agree. The list I have shared with you, it may not be responsive to some African challenges. I don't know how you deal with a population that may not be literate in the village. And if we have platforms that serve such people that may not be able to read what you're publishing, how else can they access the content? I think there's an opportunity for an African solution when it comes to tools for publishing. Why don't you take that challenge and run with it? Yes, everything you've said is correct. We need an African solution to African problems. But sometimes even our best intentions, they need resourcing.
I want to add another piece of information to that,
Yeah.
Chris, because it's a good question. The American developing companies steal the best talent from around the world. And so, you know, many of the Africans who are in a position to make that have gotten employed by, they came to school here and they have been employed by American companies. So, you know, it's just, as Dooney mentioned the other day, it's really hard to compete with us. And when it comes to that, it's unfortunate. All right, other questions?
So I'm just interested in one of the things that you were talking about, which was about getting staff, people, interns into publications, because I actually think that that's something that, you know, I know that like our members have constantly said to me, like, how do we get interns in and how do we pay for them, etc. And I had a very quick chat to Bill now about what does that mean in terms of, like, for instance, getting school kids in. And I just wanted us to have a debate in the room, if that's useful, around would it make sense to kind of get like some school kids and things in? Because I mean, anywhere we are, there would be like high schools and things around. And I know that, you know, I mean, we've got all these languages that we want, you know, our publications to be published in. And obviously, if the local high school will have kids which can speak that local language. And I'm just kind of thinking that if we could have a bit of a debate, I mean, would the kind of various language teachers there, you know, play an interesting role? Because suddenly I thought, you know, actually, you know, we've always got this issue of like, how do we, you know, make sure that there's more staff, there are more people around. So I just wanted to get a sense from like all of you, like, what do you think? Do you think that is a way of getting capacity in? Thanks.
A couple of years ago, we were involved. I'm on the board of a nonprofit that does recycling. We were approached by Media 24. They had a CSI project called We Can 24. What it entailed is you target a rich school, like a Crawford. And around a Crawford, you choose 10 community schools with 10 to 15 kids each. And we did design for change programs, like on a Saturday morning. And from the solutions that these kids brought out, they would write stories about them. And then we'll put them on a platform. And the media, obviously Media 24 will pick these stories up and then write them or develop them. So because it's a CSI project and it was canned, I think there's still room to take that kind of approach and utilize it in our own communities. Because we did it in Durban. I know we went to Crawford, Durban, and we used the schools there. We did one in Cosmo, and we did one in Nelspruit. So I think there's room for that. Yeah.
Thanks for raising that, Kate. Interesting input from Simon. My challenge is with interns is that you also need to give them a stipend. We can have all these wonderful ideas. We want to plug the skills. We want to bring youth into our newsrooms, and they come up with all these fresh ideas. Like Professor said, they need vibrant environments, and they want to put together this amazing content. But that's my biggest challenge right now. I just come out of having 3 interns, and they've basically they've left because they've got better offers in terms of stipends. So that is a key thing that we need to address in terms of getting the kids in, yes, getting the school kids in, getting the college leavers in, but then how do we pay them the stipend? Because remember, it's time consuming. If you're managing your newsroom, you're already coming up against walls when it comes to lack of revenue. And then you've got to, I can't have an intern in if I can't pay them. It's the right thing to do. Right, thank you.
We use interns, and yes, you pay them a stipend, because the thing is, as we were talking about dynamics, which are unique to us versus, say, the United States, you find that someone is probably the first graduate in their family. They need money for transport before anything else. So the concept of volunteering, it's not so much that people don't want to volunteer, it's just the reality at home that, you know, if you're going to spend 75 Rand a day just on transport, you can't just be coming in for free. So there's that reality. But what we have found is there are kids, so sometimes we have different categories. The ones who have completed their qualifications, there's a certain amount that we pay. But the ones who sometimes are still, because depending on the qualification, probably need 18 months experience in order to qualify, because they were doing an FET qualification. Those guys, we just say, we'll pay you for your data, some data allowance and some transport allowance, but we have staggered it depending on whether you've completed or you have not completed. But certainly you can't expect anyone to do it for free. And in our case, they don't even come to the office that often. They probably come to the office once a week because we are virtual, because it would also just be too far because we work from home on the other side of town. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Kate, for raising that. And I take note of Shirley's concern regarding costs. So we are thinking of a different kind of solution where I just happen to be a former teacher. I used to teach English many years ago. So I'm working with a group of schools. There's 3 schools where we are trying to get 1 week in their language, the English language program, to be able to go into the school and teach them journalism skills, writing a report for a newspaper. So that is a training program designed by educators in consultation with educators, perhaps something that can be formally, at some stage, formally be included in the curriculum. And we're busy talking to people at WCD, which is Western Cape Education Department, just for a week of input where someone like myself, who happens to be a former teacher, but anyone from a newsroom who is skilled enough to teach children certain writing skills with a given curriculum for 1 week. And the exchange out of that would be for the learners who are really interested to actually write a report, to do a news story, to contribute something to the paper. And that's the exchange. No money, no costs, no funds, no stipends. So they don't even have to come to the newsroom. They don't have to visit your newspaper. If they want to, they can find their own way there if they want to. But the real exchange is going to the school, empowering them with knowledge, and the return you get is actual content that they produce for your newspaper.
All right, so we have student living newspapers. So our business model is primarily centered around the university leavers to create the content. So journalists that are supposed to be graduating. So we have this thing called work integrated learning that allows us to assist them as well with feedback, mentorship, and also get them published. So we do not, and in our contracts with the university and also the students themselves, when we onboard them, we make it very clear that there's no expectation of stipends and that they are doing this based on them getting the platform to be published and also the mentorship. However, there are times where we have to make decisions, such as if you want to go cover a Dudula strike at the Union Building, as an example, please make sure that you are covered. This is on you. And if you want to go there, it's your own cost. And we pretty much indemnify ourselves from that because it's part and parcel of what they will be taught in school in any case. So our side, yeah, student living is based on that model of utilizing university students. So 3 or 4 years ago, I launched a publication called Mother Tongue, which was based around high schools in Alexandra. Now, there it was a great project. I call it a project because it was not really sustainable. However, there we found that when we do want to get students in high school to participate in some kind of content creation and photography, etc., it must not interfere with their curriculum. And those are the things that the school themselves made it very clear to us that whatever we do, we must make sure that the students are doing it as over and above because it could interfere with their curriculum. So there's a really fine line utilizing the students, and also there's an expectation as well from the parents that are you exploiting our kids? So we sold advertising based on the content. So Vodacom was one of the people that we approached. So, so there's a little bit of a level of exploitation that comes with utilizing high school kids, but there's also a level of empowering the students, but then with the fine line of not interfering with their schooling curriculum. Just a point.
Thanks so much. I mean, I think that was brilliant. I just wanted to ask a question to Slee, because I am so for instance, I've started to have discussions with Wits journalism, you know, and saying to them, because they actually have a whole lot of students that have to do work. And they really struggle to find work because of big mainstream companies are really, I mean, there are not a lot of people there, you know, and so, yeah, so in fact, community media is a perfect place to place a whole lot of their students so that they can actually finish their degree. And I was just wondering, you know, but again, there's this terrible situation of there's no money. Like you know, Wits can't kind of give people money for the you know, that stipend, which you're right. I mean, in the perfect world, we should absolutely be paying that. But it was just a thought, and I think it's just, I'm also picking up from what everybody's saying here. If those students at Wits, like in the worst case scenario, like can't, you know, there's no money for transport, and I get it. You can't be asking people to go to your newsroom if you, yeah, I mean, no, that's not fair. But if we could have a situation of getting the students to literally just have a telephone conversation, a WhatsApp call, basically, you know, send the stuff to you via email, because they do have access to that. I mean, they've got all the labs at Wits and everything, you know, and we set up some kind of arrangement where the students worked remotely with you, and then they fulfilled their requirements in terms of their curriculum, and you got extra staff, so they don't feel exploited because they've got to do it anyway for their course. It's just, could that work? Yes. Could that work? Thank you.
Other parts of the country, because we write for everyone. So even if it's someone in the Eastern Cape, in Limpopo, because they can just write business stories or education stories from those, because we write for everyone. We're not restricted to any community. So capital, yes.
Sorry, just a comment. Yes, I think it can work, Kate, because we streamed the local government elections, the last one. We had students in Cape Town, in Johannesburg, and in Durban. They were using their phones. So we're talking about the elections. So what we are saying, it can work really. Yeah.
I'll be very quick with this one. And I think from an institution point of view, Kate, perhaps, yes, you facilitating that with Wits to feeding us with these students, will definitely take them. However, from a sustainability point of view, perhaps it might be a good thing to investigate how MICT CETA can get involved from a monetary point of view. Because yes, in principle, it is great. There's no expectation of funds. However, to actually have the actual equipment, making sure that they are actually having a good enough cell phone, and perhaps there are some licensed tools that we've seen here that might be needed in creating that content, like infographics, etc. Someone has to fit the bill for that. So MICT CETA must definitely be pursued by AIP to help with that project if you want to take it on. Cheers.
Unfortunately, I don't understand why MICT CETA is not very involved. The FPM CETA is actually the one that funds us because of the printing aspect. Remember, the only problem is the printing aspect of FPM CETA should be, it's not the real printing that we do, it's the, what you call it, the behind the scenes printing. If you know, typesetters, typesetters like the physical, but for some reason it's involved. Like our funding for that Media 24 project was coming from FPM CETA. MICT wasn't even involved. So we need to, also engage and understand, to who's the real one, who's supposed to be, because they deal with the technical side of things, Thank you.
Sam, could you talk a little
there's
bit about the
something-
project where the publisher uses the high school? Can you get a little bit more granular into exactly how that's working and what the students are getting out of it besides the experience?
Yes. I can talk about that in a minute. But everything you have said in this conversation is correct. But there's something I did not hear. The moment you partner with students, that opens an opportunity for you to look for funding from organizations, because the students, when they start working for the community media, they are picking up other skills like civic engagement. I spent time at the Kettering Foundation in Ohio. I spent my 1 year there as a pre-doctoral student. And they have those partnerships where they try to partner high schools with media organizations, because they see those partnerships as a way of cultivating a sense of civic engagement among the youth. And the Kettering Foundation will fund you to be able to bring in high school students. There are other organizations, I think there are two in Chicago, that would fund community media organizations to be able to work with high school students, not just to produce content, but because in the course of working with the community media, they are picking other skills that are good for democracy, like civic engagement. But from our research, I saw 3 different models that community media organizations used in partnering with students. In one example, they did not pay the students. This was the high-tech media organization in Greensburg. They had the best video, the best equipment that the high school could not afford. So in pitching that partnership, they pitched it as a training program. You come in, after school, you come into the media organization, and we will show you how to operate the video equipment. We'll show you how to operate the computer. We'll show you how to operate the camera. So the students were not getting paid, but they were getting skills. And once you learn how to operate a camera, you can go and cover the high school football team on Friday evenings. And that is very empowering for the student. So they are getting something in return. I had some people who are sensitive about being seen as if they're exploiting students. And I would not advocate for using someone without paying them. I think you make a value proposition. What am I getting in return for doing this? There's a guy in Baldwin City. He told me the way he recruited students was he would actually go to the classroom and pay students money in front of all the other kids. So-and-so is getting paid $20 because he wrote a story for the local newspaper, and that story is appearing in the newspaper today. And he would have them stand up and they would clap for them. He's a hero. And then he would get paid $20. I said, why would you do that? It's a recruitment tool. Other students see it and they want to make some money. And I would get pitched so many stories. So there are 3 different ways of partnering. Number 1, you can pay. Number 2, you can maybe look at the skills they'll be getting as a way of pitching a partnership. And the 3rd way is to look for an organization. I think UNESCO would come in here and maybe fund a partnership between a community media organization and high school students. The moment you open the door for students, I think you are in a position to look for money from outside. And I would be willing to come up with a list of organizations that I know that you can approach. Yeah, I'm talking about Kettering Foundation because I spent time there, I know. But I have other organizations that I can list up that would support such efforts. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor, for the presentation. I just want to find out, when it comes to these tools, is it advisable to translate the content that we put out in other languages, because most of us publish in indigenous languages. So you find that there are limitations there in terms of the people who can access that information. I publish in isiZulu, and I know the limits there is that only isiZulu speaking people will be able to access that information. So my question is it advisable to then translate that content, that story, into a language that would be understood by the wider audience? Thanks.
Yes, it is advisable, and it also, when you translate, it helps you overcome the challenges of pitching to advertisers that may be national. A national advertiser in South Africa may not be interested in advertising for in your publication because you are limited in terms of circulation. But the moment you translate that and make it accessible to other people outside your boundaries, then you are also positioning yourself as someone who is attractive to advertisers. And I think it's a great question. I speak Kikuyu, which is the largest tribe in Kenya. I speak Kikuyu. And the first thing I do when I come to my office is turn on a Kikuyu radio station so I can feel like I'm in a village. But I have never been able to access a Kikuyu publication, a newspaper, because there is none in the diaspora. There is none that is distributed here. So they are losing opportunities to position themselves to the 3 million Kenyans who live outside Kenya. So your question, it's a relevance question. It's also a business question. It's an opportunity that you are not taking advantage of. And maybe that's the lesson, the biggest lesson tonight, that there are opportunities that community media are not taking advantage of because we are limiting ourselves as local. And it goes back to our conversation. Maybe the local is global as well.
Yes, Sindili mentions her experience is different, and it varies. Like we had the budget, Milo Miller from the budget came down to talk about how he serves the Amish communities. The Amish speak a dialect of German among themselves. Their language is called Pennsylvania Dutch or Pennsylvania Dutch. It's not a written language. They don't communicate with it except vocally. That's why their newspaper is in English. You know, because that's the written language that they use. And so if you're providing content that's going to be spoken language versus written language, you might have to be more flexible in terms of what you're offering. You may have to actually have different languages for different channels depending on the audience you're trying to reach. And Sam also mentioned the literacy issue. Obviously, audio is the way around the literacy issue. People know how to talk, they know how to hear. So if you're delivering content in audio format or video format, that might be a better opportunity to use and preserve the indigenous languages while writing in a language that's a little bit more accessible for those who read it.
But Bill, honestly, I think this question is so critical because it ties back to the question about the high school. And I'm sitting here thinking, what does she mean by translation? I think translation is not just language. The stories you're publishing right now, is there a way they can be translated for a younger group, younger generation that you're not serving right now? There was a gentleman who mentioned having high school students come in and come up with ideas for stories. How do the issues that you're covering speak to young people? How would young people want them covered? How would you translate the content you're covering right now for high school students so that you actually end up with more than one publication? Yeah, so I see translation as more than language. It's about targeted narratives that speak to people where they are in terms of age, in terms of gender. Yeah. how is your media organization positioned? Is it just a general? Are you just doing general narratives, or do you need to rethink how you package your information to appeal to different people? And is there value in doing that? Value that you're now leaving on the table. So translation is a loaded term, and maybe there is value in rethinking translation.
I remember when I was in South Africa, I visited Tshwane University, and the student radio station there, the students were so fluid in their multilingual that they would be speaking in 2 or 3 different languages almost simultaneously on the air. And I mean, do the adults speak like that?
Yeah.
So the adults are also able to understand, because it seemed like the kids, that was a language that the kids had developed for themselves. Okay.
I worked for a guy in Kenya. We had 2 different ways of communicating. There's a magazine, it's called the Weekly Review magazine. It was a hard-hitting magazine. Yeah, we always had the police in there, you know, looking for us. But the same content was packaged as a comic for kids. So we had, on a Friday, we had the magazine for adults, and then we had the comic. And the comic always outsold the magazine. That's what I'm trying to say. Is there something you're not doing, something that can actually bring in a lot of revenue? Yeah, packaging, same stuff, differently for different audiences.
That the reason I'm saying for us, it's actually different. It would be suicidal for us to actually publish in English.
Sure.
Because there are so many business publications in English and in Afrikaans to a certain level. The reason we saw a gap was precisely because no one publishes financial news in isiZulu, which then excludes quite a large community. Similarly with the education, sometimes people ask us, but how do you publish educational resources in isiZulu? And the resources are not in isiZulu when we have a link to say NSFAS, but contextualizing what you will find when you go into the website of NSFAS is in isiZulu, because again, all those resources until we came in were just in English. Yeah.
And that certainly makes a great deal of sense. I mean, if you've got your niche and it's locked in, you don't want to damage the niche. I think what Sam is getting at is if you feel like you're limited in your reach and you want to expand your reach, finding other vernaculars to communicate in, more targeted communication might be a strategy to embrace, but obviously you don't want to do anything that damages what you have built. Any other questions for Sam?
So Sam, this is a question to you, but it's also like a question to our members, and it's this interesting idea of thinking through if you've got a publication that's covering a particular area, but now you've also got a radio station in the same area. Do you have any experience of kind of cooperation between kind of publications and radio stations, and kind of leveraging off different institutions that are all in the same area? I'm just wondering if you've had any experience of that, and also just asking our members, I mean, have you got experience of that, and do you think that might be a good idea of looking at institutions that are all operating in the same area and might be able to help one another? Thanks.
Well, I can respond from experience. One of my friends, he owns it's now the largest TV station in Kenya. I was very skeptical when he told me what he wanted to do. So now he owns, it's called Citizen TV. It's the largest. He's very innovative. A few years ago, I met him, and he shared an idea that I thought was dumb. He told me, now I have the national TV. Guess what I'm trying to do? What? I'm going to start a Kikuyu TV and a Kikuyu radio station. A Kikuyu TV, a Kikuyu radio station, you're going to cannibalize yourself. You're going to finish your business. Well, turns out I was wrong. He has the biggest TV station that broadcasts in English and Swahili. And now among the Kikuyu, and we are a couple of millions of us, the TV station of choice among the Kikuyus is his TV station. The radio station of choice among the Kikuyus is his radio station. But there is something he does which I don't like. Maybe he's smart. He will send you to cover an event, take the story you produce and format it differently for different media. So he has the same amount of the number of people working for him, but he distributes content using different platforms. I've also seen him. If you're already a journalist, he wants you to specialize, to also add some TV skills so he can deploy you wherever he needs. So one day you may be on radio, the next day you're on TV. So I've had people say he overworks them because he has all these platforms. So there's the issue of ethic. I haven't been able to confront him about it. I hope to when I go there next month. I need to find a nice way of doing that. But I think he has found a way to distribute same content on different platforms. But I think he's exploiting his workers too. Yeah, when you have your hands in all these platforms and you're not hiring more people, he's exploiting his workers. He pays them well. But I don't think anyone has confronted him about it. So yes, to answer your question, I have seen it done successfully, but you need to be conscious of what that may be doing to the morale in the newsroom. That's the only example I can share because I'm private to that, you know. I thought you asked if other people can share too.
We were waiting for sharing. I remember I did a media tour of the Bahamas once, and there was this guy. He worked at a boatyard, pleasure boats, and he noticed that there was no good local weather service for the Bahamas. They got all of their weather forecasts from the United States, which is very close by. But he's like, there's no localized information for all the people who are boating around all the different islands. So he came to America. He bought an old radio tower and an old transmitter and hauled it on a boat back there. And he set up a radio station just to do weather. It was just strictly a weather radio station. It grew very quickly. And so then he started doing news programming over the radio as well. He became a journalist, no training. He also was devoutly Christian, and so he also started a religious broadcaster that started radio and then TV. He now owns the National Christian Television Network in Bahamas. He still does the radio station as well, and this is the thing that I find most interesting, is that he interrupts the sermons and the talks on the Christian radio with the weather. So the preacher gets up to the weather map and he actually does the weather, continues to do the weather. He never lost track of it. And he found all these little niches that were not being filled in his community, and he filled them. And he's legendary. He is, and he's a lovely man, and he's beloved by everybody, and he's a leader in the industry there. And he was not a trained journalist, no university. He just saw a need for information and he filled it. And then he saw another need for information and he filled it. And then he found another need and he filled it. and his thing has grown. And he did all of the wiring himself. His TV studio is set up even more clumsily than what we've set up here. There's wires and things everywhere, but when the camera's on, it looks very slick. It looks very, very slick. And he can control everything from, he's at the desk interviewing people and he's controlling everything from there because he designed it himself. And it just speaks to, I think, the ability to innovate if you just feel that, you know, nobody else can do it. I can do it. I can build it myself. I don't have to emulate anybody else. I'm not trying to copy anybody else. I am building this thing for my community based on what my community needs and what I can provide to them. True innovator. Kate has a question.
So I'm Aneta, I'm sorry, I'm putting you on the spot, but just remember when we had the conversation when we were at Stellenbosch, and then we have this amazing radio station which is called Bush Radio. It's like one of the oldest radio stations in the country, and it's done some absolutely awesome work. And you know, the Bush Radio, the person Brenda Leonard was there, and she's just awesome. And then, you know, I know that she was saying, you know, I'd love to do more work with Aneta, because I think Aneta's got the most amazing publication, and it's based in the same area. And I was just, you know, I mean, obviously it's really, really early days, but I kind of thought that it would be lovely to get a sense from you. Do you think that partnership might work, and do you think that might even be like a lovely pilot, you know, for our other members? But just a thought. And sorry, Annette, you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but we had this lovely conversation, and I'm now putting you on the spot, so thanks.
Thanks, Kate, for putting me on the spot. Yes, we've had a conversation with Brenda, but actually both ourselves, we are out of the country at the moment, so we will only resume the conversations once we're back in Cape Town again. It will work. It has worked. I have partnered with Radio KC in Paarl. They gave me just a 10 to 15 minute slot where I come in the morning and I do a Xhosa word, and then I will explain the Xhosa word in English, and then we will just prompt the conversation around the word, and it has worked. There is, however, challenges sometimes because the radio station is predominantly Afrikaans. So my market that I am targeting is not necessarily listening at that moment to that radio station, but I am opening myself up to a new audience because now I can teach someone else the language who's not conversant with the language. So in that sense, the partnership has been great. It has worked, but I've stopped for now because I'm here.
I just wanted to raise a point. I think a lot of us, we've got powerful publications, and somewhere in the same town, there's some very powerful radio station. But when I look at Lenasia, I find that we're working in silos, and also that I think there's a little bit of almost like a sense of being threatened. I don't know, they're not comfortable with opening us or allowing us into their space. It's okay for us to run presses for them, but then for us to be in their space is a little bit tricky. And I think it's something that perhaps we need to look at. Well, I'm certainly going to go back and see if I can do some kind of a spot on one of the local radio stations. We're going to try, and I think we all need to make that effort. I mean, Anita's doing it, so I think we can too. Thank you.
This is quite interesting. At the beginning of, I can't remember when, but we have a guy in Mamasbury on the West Coast. It's a community radio too. He works with Blender a lot. I've met Blender a lot with the Cape Town Community TV. So when Jackson Mthembu, the minister and the president, he was in charge of, I think, was it communication or GCIS? Yes. he was promoting a lot on us print local community newspapers, getting like a little pie from DCIS at the time. Unfortunately, he passed away before implementing this guy. He was a very nice guy. So there's this guy that he was very passionate about media, opening up a radio station. He was going to Mzori, a popular place in Cape Town, which is like a Chisanyama barbecue place, taking photographs, using that money that people were paying to print those photographs. And then he funded himself to buy data. And he had a radio station on the internet. And the thing was, he was just broadcasting music and stuff like that. And then I helped him to pry money from the MDDA. As you know, they refused him 3 times. And then he came to me. I polished up his application. Fortunately, he got the funding. It was about 3.8 million that he got. But once that money the money he received, he forgot about my presence. They built him a state-of-the-art studio. And we were telling him that you cannot rent the premises and let the government build you a state-of-the-art studio. You could have rather tried to buy a place which is permanent for you. So in the funding application to the government, I was put in there with my skills as I'm going to be the head of news in there. But when money came in there, that was never implemented. So what he does now, it's like a news desert in there. There's what we've been talking about, the news desert. He doesn't do news. For what he does, I told him, because he doesn't want to pay anything. He says there's no money and stuff. I said, I can work for you now, even though I was your partner when we were doing this, but I'm willing to work for you. You just need to pay me because I can't work for you for free. And then he says, no, he's going to do his own thing. So he could take stories from the Cape Times and from other sites and utilize them as his own content. I told him, you're going to get in trouble with this because this is like it's not almost, but it's plagiarism. You faking it that this is the radio's work when you haven't produced any of this kind of work. So there's potential in there. There's a lot of partnership. I even suggested to him that we can do even funded programs. Like, let's say, for example, housing issues, grant issues. We go here, we go to approach, let's say, Mercedes-Benz South Africa to fund these kind of things. It's a funded radio program. He doesn't implement anything like this. And then I said to him, you can then utilize ground up stories because you can read on their stories, just attribute to say that this story was first published by ground up. At least you can have people listening to the radio. The radio is being run down as we speak. He doesn't make money. It depends on government to give him a link to GCIS to parliament. Other than that, he just plays music. So it's a pity. There's a lot of potential. He can reach up to UCT. He's picked up in a lot of areas. But when money is involved with a person that doesn't have a crew in news and the partnership doesn't seem to work, these are already established now radio station, which has got so much potential in there. And if he could have like listened and we push news as our product, people would come and listen to it because news is what matters. People want to hear what's happening around them. That's the power of community media. So then I was thinking of also maybe starting an own radio station, but it's going to be too much for me to handle. It was in the works. And yeah, I've tried it, and it's really kind of a good thing to sort of marry your print to radio. Yeah.
So
Thank you.
It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that happens here too, is you have radio stations that, I mean, I remember when I worked at a newspaper, I was listening to this local radio station and it's like, wow, their news department sounds like our news department because they're just reading our newspaper on the air and not crediting us, not even mentioning, because they felt threatened. Like if they had said, oh, well, we're getting this information from the newspaper, then the gig will be up, right? I worked at the time, the newspaper was owned by a pretty large company and they sent a cease and desist letter to them saying, you know, you can't use our content without crediting us. And then he called us and said, well, what can we do? And we say, just credit us. You can use our content. Just say you're getting it from our newspaper. It's a free ad for us and it's free content for you. That's all you have to do. And that was how we overcame that problem. It wasn't a formalized agreement. We didn't work together in any other way. It's just if they were reading news that was in our paper, they would mention our paper. We got a little bit of free advertising, but at least we got credit for our content. But it did take legal action. It did take a cease and desist letter, the threat of legal action, to get that guy to stop plagiarizing us.
Bill, there's something I can share. This is many years ago. UNESCO came up with an idea, and they sent me to the Caribbean, to Grenada, the island of Grenada. And they brought in community media organizations from the Caribbean to do exactly what we are suggesting here, creating a network of community media organizations, because each person adds value to that network. So this was an idea driven by UNESCO, and I was asked to set up an online portal. This was many years ago, an online portal, and the way it worked was as follows. This portal would target people from the Caribbean who live outside the Caribbean, in Canada, in USA. So you bring in your community media content, the other one does the same, and we have a network of community media organizations, and regardless of what part of the Caribbean you come from, you would find content that was relevant to you. And then they would sell, the portal would sell advertising, and that's how they would split up the revenue. So I like the idea. You are all attending this session here at Ohio University. Maybe one of the ideas you can take with you is, instead of operating in silos, perhaps it's time to rethink how you do things. Maybe it's time for a network of community media organizations from South Africa, a network of community media organizations. How you split up the revenue is up to you. But I think there is an audience out there that you are not reaching, that maybe you can target. How about targeting South Africans who live outside South Africa? We have a lot of them in Kenya. We have a lot of them in America. If you came up and pooled resources, you would not be cannibalizing each other. You would be adding value to this network and creating a new revenue stream. From what I saw in the Caribbean, that worked pretty well. Yeah, it was being driven by UNESCO, but maybe you can drive it on your own here.
That's a great idea. I will share an experience I had again in the Bahamas that was a great idea, but it failed because of some cultural barriers. An effort to create a pan-Caribbean independent news organization, and it suffered from, what do you call it, tall poppy, crabs in a bucket, whatever. There were actors there who were resentful that they weren't going to get more than their fair share. They were happy to take, but they weren't so happy to give. And the whole idea was scuttled because one single person was committed to ruining it, because that person was so self-absorbed. And it was like, what's in it for me, not what's in it for anybody else. And that one person had the power to ruin it. And this wasn't a very powerful person. It was just the person's sole goal was to scuttle the whole idea. So, you know, it really does take, you have to pull together people who are really committed to working together. And if you do have that crab in the bucket who's pulling everybody down, get that person out of the mix as quickly as possible. Just say, you have your own bucket over here, go have fun. You're no longer welcome in our group. We have time for one more question. So make it a good one. Dooney.
No, but mine is not a really question. Just to emphasize that, I mean, there's a lot that, I mean, we can do, I mean, as a community media, more especially we as publishing indigenous language. I mean, we are going to have, I mean, a conference in 2 months' time, I mean, indigenous languages, I mean, and media. I mean, United Nations, UNICEF, SANEF, I mean, they're part of it. I mean, Sledge, she's doing, I mean, the online, I mean, in Sizul. I mean, if I mean, she can get funding, I mean, there's a possibility she can start, I mean, a national radio that's going to, a private owned, I mean, a radio that's going to broadcast, I mean, in Sizul. I mean, the folks that have mentioned, I mean, in Kenya that is owning a radio station, I think is the only one, I mean, who's owning a private radio station that is broadcasting in indigenous languages, I mean, in Africa, I mean, based on the research that we have found. I think that guy is going to be part of the conference, because I heard his name mentioned there. And so there's a lot that, I mean, we can do. I mean, you just need, I mean, to have, I mean, a good partners, and the partners that will understand, I mean, the media and also the community media.
We should find a way to encourage cross-boundary conversations, because I think we can learn a lot from each other. The guy in Kenya, you can learn something from him, and he can learn something from you. I have met people in Nigeria who are doing some of the things you're doing. I don't know how to do this, but there's need for conversations across boundaries, and we can do that by taking advantage of technology. We don't have to travel. We can do this through technology. Yeah. Yes. And that's my challenge to you. Find a way to stay local, but find a way to connect with other people within the boundaries of South Africa and outside, because I think we are all on the same mission. Yeah. Thank you very much, Bill, for inviting me. And it was a pleasure to talk to my fellow Africans. It was not a presentation. I was just having a conversation in the village. Yes.
Thank you, Sam.
Mm-hmm.
Sam, thank you so very, very much. And we'll let you go back to your day. I will share your PowerPoint with them, and
Yes.
I will also share your email. I'm sure you'll get emails.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.